Hi and welcome back to the dpaf. We're here today with Patrick Graham, a 61-year-old social worker who was charged by the Crown Prosecution Service along with 4 other men of running a paedophile ring and raping a woman at parties in Cardiff in the 1980s. The case collapsed just before trial as the Crown Prosecution felt there was insufficient evidence, and Patrick Graham is here to talk about the whole experience with us today. Patrick, are you there?
I'm here. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. Appreciate you joining us. Now, you and I have been both been falsely accused, but is it fair to say we're both friends?
I think you could say that we've become friends because of this bizarre situation that we've both been through. It's something that I've made quite a lot of friends via this way. We're forming a kind of unfortunate and not very elite club now.
Well, I know what a great guy you are, Patrick, but can you give us an overview about how this case against you sort of unfolded in the first place? As I understand it, you were just kind of living your life, and then you were sort of embroiled in this, very, very significant case that was covered in the national press.
You're disappearing on me there, David. Yeah, I can tell you how it unfolded, completely out of the blue. This knock on the door in the early hours of the morning, and 3 policemen there saying that I was under arrest on suspicion of a sexual assault, and they didn't go into great detail. I had absolutely no idea what they were on about or who it could be that they were talking about. And only when I'd been held in isolation for quite a long time, the typical sort of softening up thing that the police love to do, I think it was about 3 in the afternoon when I got called out to the interview room, and they revealed the name of this person, and it's a name that barely registered in my brain. It was the daughter of a worker that I used to have employed way back in the 1990s, and her daughter was someone who I met once, I think. Very, very little contact at all, no interest on my part because she was some 13-year-old daughter of a worker I didn't like. But, it turns out that she'd accused me of digital penetration and my 4 co-accused of the most obscene things.
Did you know these other men, Patrick?
I knew one of them very well. One of them's my best friend. But the other 3 I had absolutely no knowledge of whatsoever, and they didn't know me from Adam either.
Okay. And what about what year was this that this happened to you, where you were taken in by the police?
It was June 2016 when it all kicked off. Yeah.
And you just retired at that point, or you were still working?
I'd just been made redundant, actually, but it was as good as a retirement because I was getting on. So the odds of me, I was going to get part-time work. That was the plan. And the senior social work manager job, with the cuts going on in the councils, I was an obvious target for cuts. But I could have got into lots of other jobs, and I did. In fact, I had a job interview the day after my arrest. Unsurprisingly, I didn't get that job.
And what about, Patrick, what about the sort of the case? How did it unfold from that original police interview going forward?
Well, I assumed, they put me on bail and I wasn't allowed to speak to these people who I'd never spoken to before in my life anyway, so that wasn't much of a bail condition. But my best mate that I couldn't speak to, that was a real imposition. I had no idea what his involvement was because they didn't give you any information about that. And it was only when I went back after about 3 different bail rebailings, as it were. When they charged me, I said, "This is absolute bollocks," and that's written on the police statement. This is absolute bollocks. I wasn't there.
So did? Can you just clarify, Patrick? Did you have any kind of criminal record or criminal background before all this happened?
Absolutely
I've met you. You don't seem like a very sort of troublesome kind of guy.
I worked in adult social care. I worked with the police lots of times on community safety issues, and generally speaking, I don't even have a speeding ticket to my name.
And what did the police say when you told them that?
They once they decide that you're guilty, that's it. They don't seem to have any ability to see the obvious. The fact that they took all our computers, my wife's and mine, and all the other 4 people's, all their computers, and they didn't even look at them during the whole 2 years, because if they had looked at them, they'd have found absolutely zero child porn imagery on any of them. And do you know what? If any one of us was a paedophile as part of any kind of paedophile ring,
there'd be communications.
There would have been pictures there. That's something that any prison officer will tell you. I found out since. I thought it was a high odds against anyone having zero on a computer, and they assure me it's zero. There has never been a known paedophile in prison who hasn't had this stuff on their computers. So it's pretty much proof, if you want to say proof of anything, that we were none of us paedophiles. The fact that there was nothing there.
Yeah. So how did you deal with these charges from a sort of strategic point of view? What was your mindset?
Well, I had to kind of very quickly adapt to the idea that the police were insane, that they had no ability to use logic or deduction or investigative powers, that all those things were quite beyond them, and that they were going to push to try and get us into court on the basis of this one person's testimony. So my strategy was, okay, I won't put any faith in the police whatsoever, as they've demonstrated that that's an impossible concept. You can't trust them with evidence. They can't handle it. They don't know what they're doing. They're just focusing purely on sending you down. And therefore, my tactics were to get as much information as I could and find out and dig and find out more about this other person to undermine their credibility,
right,
which turned out not to be too very hard, because guess what? They'd done this 3 times before.
Oh, wow. So she'd done this 3 times before?
Yep. And also to build up my own credibility, so I got character witnesses and all my history laid out and all the things that showed that it was impossible for me to have been at these parties. Mm-hmm. Even though they tried to say it happened vaguely sometime over a period of 6 years. I mean, how ridiculous is that?
So you hadn't attended any parties that were described?
Sorry, I missed that. So
You didn't attend any of these parties that the girl described?
No, she described parties at her father's house, a house I had never been to in my life. The only reason I knew her father at all was I occasionally played snooker with him at a snooker club where it was just like a winner stays on. So you play against other people who you don't really know when you gradually maybe get to know them a little bit. But I never went back to his house and he never came back to my house. It was,
right.
We weren't that close, It was just like, I imagine I probably met 5,000 people at parties I know that well.
Yeah, well, it's going such a long way back, isn't it, as well? I mean,
yeah.
It's just it's not easy for me to remember a party I was at 12 months ago, let alone sort of 2 or 3 decades ago.
28 years ago.
Yeah.
It's not going to be. But I knew I'd never been to the guy's house because that's one thing I was sure of. I looked up his address, the one that they'd given me, and just to check out to see whether my memory was mistaken. So I drove and found this address, and I looked it up and down, and I thought, no, there is absolutely no way I've ever even been here.
Wow. So, in a previous statement, Patrick, you said that the police simply believed everything the accuser said, and even when she changed her story, they continued to accept it. You said she was a serial fantasist who has made up allegations before, and that the police were willing to wreck families' lives on the altar of better statistics for rape prosecutions. Is that a fair description?
That's an accurate quote of what I said. Yeah, and I still hold that to be true because, she's proven to be a serial fantasist. us five, there were four other men she'd accused at various times. And a lot of the stuff that came out, which is all then evidence that we saw, showed that this was a woman whose grasp of the truth was extremely tenuous. And one of the prosecution lawyers said that it's very clear from how she describes things that have happened, including the fact that my friend and so-called partner in crime was supposed to have committed an abortion on her on the afternoon of a day that he was actually at work.
And it's totally outrageous.
And the only way she could have envisaged this happening was from, he reckoned, was from watching an episode of Call the Midwife, which of course would have been set before the abortion laws came in. As a GP, my friend who was a GP, there's absolutely no way he would have performed an abortion on anyone. He would have known that it was ridiculously dangerous and stupid when you could just send them straight up to the NHS to have it all done anonymously and above board, straight up the road at the hospital. The idea, the very concept that any doctor would do that is so ridiculous. You might as well be talking pink flying unicorns.
I can believe it from everything that's going on here. Can you take us
the
forward
police
then?
Believed it.
Well, Patrick, can you take us forward? Because you've been charged. You've kind of going through the evidence, realising that this is just a non-issue. When did all this come to a head? Can you give us the sort of the timeline going forward?
Well, we got charged. We were in the proper Crown Court with the judge arraigned.
Okay, so you were charged in the June, and then when did you get to the Crown Court?
We got to the Crown Court, what was called the pre-trial hearing. That was because there were two hearings we went to. First off is where it just first plea hearing, and we all shout "not guilty" very loudly. And then we have the pre-trial hearing when they're supposed to check on the fact that the police have revealed the unused evidence. Well, they did reveal the unused evidence, but not all of it, and not in time. It was actually only really revealed about 3 weeks before the trial was due to start, and we were scheduled for a 4-week trial.
Wow.
And
so when was the trial scheduled to begin?
Sorry, how did the...
When was the trial scheduled to begin, Patrick?
It was scheduled to begin on the 29th of January.
Okay, so this is like 6 months later, something like that?
Yeah, well, we charged in April, so yeah, it's 6 and a bit months, that's right. And it's only in the 3 weeks prior to that we finally got hold of unused evidence which showed that the policewoman had been chatting up and chatting with the defendant to such an extent that they were like best buddies about to go on holiday together. Some would say they were, like bedroom buddies. It was ridiculous.
So this was revealed to you in what way? There was a letter to your lawyer, or what happened? How did you find out?
Well, they send this stuff to the lawyers, and the lawyers then, having looked through it, Steve's lawyer in particular, sent a bombshell of a letter to the CPS pointing out exactly what was wrong in everything that she'd said and done, and made 10 major points which were pretty conclusive proof that it was all bullshit. And at the end of it said, not only will we consider, we will pursue you for costs, we will also prosecute you, the CPS, for perverting the course of justice if you continue in this outrageous case. So Steve's lawyer dropped several hand grenades right in the laps of the CPS, just 2 weeks before the trial. And what do you know? The day later, the CPS went, "Oh, yeah, sorry, we'll throw in the towel."
And that was it.
Yeah.
And so how did you feel at that point then, Patrick?
Well, there's obviously an initial moment of relief when you hear that you're not going to trial, that it's all over. But then there's anger. And that anger doesn't just go away. And my main anger a lot of people expect me to be really angry at this woman. After all, she's the one made the crazy accusations, tried to put men in jail, and has mad fantasies about people who really should be being treated in a locked cell, some, padded room maybe. But actually, it's the police that I really feel angry at, because they're supposed to be the intelligent ones. They're supposed to follow evidence. They demonstrated that they are incapable of doing the right thing, and that is unforgivable.
And were you aware of the widespread nature of false accusations before this happened to you?
No, absolutely the opposite. I wouldn't have believed they were common. I campaigned to support women who were raped. I wanted to try and help change the rape laws, because I actually still believe the law is an ass on that front. It's still based on the idea of rape being the despoiling of a man's property, which is wrong. It shouldn't be. It should be all about sexual assault and degrees of, nothing to do with whether someone has been spoiled. That's not their own perspective. That's an ancient, historic, possessive attitude. But now, having had this happen, when I looked up online and started meeting up with people, I suddenly realized that it wasn't just a few, and it wasn't just a couple of hundred. It was thousands of people who were being falsely accused. That was a shock.
Yeah, well, I mean, I want to say that you've introduced me to a lot of these people, and you've kind of made me aware of how many people there are out there.
Yeah, the statistics are quite shocking. I know the rape accusations has been trundling along at somewhere between 11,000 and 16,000 a year made to the police from about 2002 till about 2014. And suddenly it starts climbing dramatically until this last year where it hits 53,000. Well, 53,000 accusations, but there were only, according to Women's Aid and Rape Crisis, only 14,000 genuine rape victims went to the police. Now, there's a huge gap for you. You wonder who's making all those accusations when the genuine rape victims aren't going to the police that much. I can tell you an answer. It's bloody obvious to me.
Yeah. Now, what can you give us also, Patrick, just going back to your case, how much money did you spend on legal defence, and have you got any of that money back?
I didn't actually have to. I was poor enough, not enough of an income, so that I got legal aid. But my friend Steve, who's a retired GP, he spent £112,000 on his defence, of which he got back £12,000. So it cost him £100,000 to be an innocent person proving his innocence.
Yeah, outrageous. And totally outrageous. And what about British taxpayers? Do you have any idea about how much they spent on your case?
All told, the estimate at the just at the last hearing we had, where they was, which called hearing for mentions, when they discharged us, £500,000.
£500,000?
Yeah. All told, we're talking police salaries here.
Okay.
We're talking lawyers' salaries. We're talking all these other things that cost, like court cost. All those days that we did the court pre-trial things, it cost £5,000 a day to run a courtroom.
Right, I heard that.
There's all these different things that cost money, but basically, the biggest waste is probably in police time. Mm-hmm. And the idea that they're so hard up for manhood, for manpower, but
well, this is the thing. If they didn't waste so much money on malicious prosecutions, they would potentially have more money and resources to go after genuine criminals, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Well, they could save, probably each force could probably save 10 million a year, and then the next thing you know, they're spending that 10 million on genuine investigation. Yeah. Investigation being their supposed job description.
What about follow-up legal action against the accuser or against the police? Have you done anything like that since the case ended against you?
Let's say it's under consideration. I've put in formal complaints, and a year later, we're still waiting for the report to come. The police's other specialist subject, apart from wasting time and doing the wrong thing, is kicking balls into the long grass. They love doing that, but they are not going to get away with it in our case. We will pursue, and I personally have an intention of trying to go after the police for perverting the course of justice, and that will be on the basis that they knew full well when they presented the case file to the Crown Prosecution Service that they were presenting a biased case in order to try and get a charge. Now that's perverting the course of justice.
Yeah, well, that's
Maximum
injustice.
punishment
That's injustice, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's technically the offence of perverting the course of justice is when you've deliberately lied in order to try and get someone prosecuted. Yeah, and that is punishable by up to life imprisonment. And yeah, that's a serious offence.
What advice, Patrick, have you got for men that might find themselves in a similar position to the position you found yourself in?
Well, the thing is, they're going to be shocked to hell to begin with. In this position where it's out of the blue, it's an accusation you're not expecting. So the first thing to do is do contact a lawyer and find a good one. Ask around. You cannot ask too many questions of other people. Go online, come into the Crown, which is the website we've set up. Matt, a friend of mine, and I are making our film.
Yeah.
We've set up a website, and we can advise people. We can keep steering people towards the main thing is away from trusting the police, which a lot of people naively do. They carry on thinking, well, I've got some more evidence here, I'll give it to the police. No, don't do that, because the police will use it to change the way the charges are framed in order that you can't use your evidence. So never do that. That's my golden rule. And we found out the hard way about these things, and look from a lot of other people. Well over 1,000 people on the websites that we've been on have been through this hell, and that's just 1,000 we know about. There's many, many more who don't get on the websites, who don't understand why they need help and support. You do need help and support, and you need to realize that the police are your enemy, not your friend. They are your enemy, and they will remain your enemy for the rest of your life. That's the other thing people have got to get used to.
So just summing up then, Patrick, what are your thoughts on the British justice system, having seen it close up in operation?
Well, I'd say, A, it's falling apart at the seams. Courtrooms are falling apart almost literally. The finance for legal aid has been ruined by government after government. The whole system of innocence tax that my friend has, so that that was David Cameron introduced that one. You can't get your money back from the state even when they've prosecuted you and you've been found innocent. You can't get your money back. That's outrageous.
Right.
There's a whole load of aspects of the CPS behaviours and the lawyers' behaviours that are inadequate, to put it mildly, unless you get really lucky with your lawyer and they work overtime for free. The odds are that you could go to jail on the basis of a weak defence or a CPS cheating with the police, just fiddling the evidence a bit against you, and the next thing you know, you're not allowed to present this in court or that in court, and, guilty verdict. And once you've been found guilty, you really are screwed. Because the idea of, we can appeal, there's an appeal system that works. There is an appeal system, and it works to protect the justice system from anyone wanting to change the answers to their guilty verdicts. It's very hard and very unusual to get a successful appeal. And this is, something we found out the hard way in the Pig and Crown group as well. There's loads of people who've tried and failed, and there are loads still trying now. And it's just a nightmare. And
people who have succeeded in beating the odds, like you have, What do you think they should do? Would you say sort of keep your head down and get on with your life, or what advice do you have for people that have actually sort of beaten the system and feeling the same sense of anger and ill will that you are?
It's a common question I get asked, and my main advice is please do shout out. Please do, because until people like Liam Allen, ourselves, and others did, then the public was not really aware, and juries were too ready to believe that that the women didn't lie and that the evidence didn't lie. Whereas now we found out that yes, that happens all the time. Yes, phone conversations are hidden. Yes, women lie all the time. Until that's made public, then we're not going to get fair trials. So my statement really is that it's a public duty to come out and say, although I can completely understand anyone who wants to keep their head below the parapet, particularly if they've got a paid job. It's much easier for me with not having a job, and my friend Steve with his being retired. Easier for us. There are plenty of people we've talked to who've done what we've done, and they've had pedo painted across their front door. They've had, bricks through their windows, their children being terrorized at school.
Yeah, that's wrong. Wrong.
This is no light matter. This is innocent people being persecuted by idiots out there who believe the myths that are told about, this woman said she was raped, therefore she was. Bullshit. I call bullshit.
Yeah.
There are plenty of reasons why women would lie about it. They're all well documented. And we need to get all of those out there in the public eye so that genuine rape victims, they need to have justice, and genuine innocent men, they need justice even more. Because there's nothing worse than the state putting you away for something you didn't do.